Hi there, I'm Laura Roberts and I want to welcome you back to the McCall's Quilting Parisian Grace Quilt Along. I'm so happy you're here today. I'm going to be showing you how to applique the beautiful things that you see on the quilt behind me, the tulips and the leaves and the vines. So real quick refresher on how to prepare your templates. These are the templates as they come on the PDF, and when they're facing up like this is how I would trace them for freezer paper. I would put the freezer paper over the top like that and trace around. And if you are working on something, this is a sandpaper board. It's really useful, and I'll show you why. When you're tracing with a sandpaper board, it's rough. So when you're tracing, you get a really good line really quickly. And it also works well when you're tracing on fabric because the fabric won't shift. All right, so if you're tracing this direction for freezer paper, when you want to trace for fusible web, remember I said you need to flop it, it needs to be the other direction. So you either would have to cut this out and put it on top and trace around it on your fusible web, which you could do, or an easier way is to take the printout, turn it over, and then I just took a black pen and I traced around from the back like that. And then with your freezer paper, your fusible web, paper side up, then when you trace, you have the reverse image. Okay? Quick thought, quick thing to point out. On this template here, this is the side of the tulip. Okay, these are petals. And you'll see it says template B, BR. BR stands for B reversed. So when you're tracing this for anything, you're going to need to trace as many this direction as you trace this direction. Okay, so no matter how you're preparing, whether you're using template plastic or freezer paper or fusible web, make sure you're tracing equal numbers of the left and the right. And again, the way I made that shape was simply by tracing, just drawing over the line from the back. Okay, so just so you can see that circle there, it's the same thing. All right, so that is how you prepare your paper templates. And now I'm going to just touch base really quickly on something to do with the leaves. If you look at the leaves in the quilt, you'll see that a lot of them are fussy cut. Fussy cut means that you have centered that shape on a specific part of the fabric. So I'm going to show you one. This is, I'll use freezer paper, I think. Okay, I'm going to cut out a leaf with my freezer paper. Now remember, freezer paper has wax on the back, and that allows you to place it on the fabric and then pick it up again and turn it around, put it on the back, which will help it adhere to your background fabric. And what I'm going to do with a freezer paper piece, I'm going to look around and see which element would I think would be really pretty. Maybe that one, because it looks like a leaf, or oh, I like that one. Okay, so when I pick that one out, what I'm going to do is put that on my little ironing board. I'll move the sandpaper away. Bring in my little ironing board. There we go. So I have my freezer paper leaf shape, like that right there. And I want that one on there because I just think that's really pretty. And I'm just going to put the freezer paper shape like that and just touch it with the iron briefly. Okay, and it's now adhered like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut around the edge of that and leave a turn under allowance, somewhere between 1/8 and 1/4 of an inch, like that. There we go, just like that. I'll neaten that up, cut off that little point. Okay, and then what I do is I'm going to transfer that freezer paper to the back of the shape now. So I'm just going to peel it off the front. And when I put it behind it, I'm going to put the paper side up toward me now. But it'll be paper side down when I turn it over, and the shiny part's up. And that's because now I can use that freezer paper edge. Remember how I was pressing it over to hold it last time? It's the same thing. I'll just do like that. See, and then press under all the edges all the way around, and I have a little piece like this, just like that one. All right, this is a freezer paper one that I already did. All right, so that's how if you want to fussy cut your leaves, you can do that. Okay, so I have a number of shapes all ready to go here, and they're prepared in different ways. I have These are the ones that I prepared with my template plastic. Remember this? Remember that template plastic? And I just put it on, cut it out about a 1/4 inch round and turned under with some starch. And you can see I have the petals ready for my tulip, like that. So those are all ready to go. If you want to do that kind of turn under, like that, I can use those. This is fusible web. And to do the fusible web, get it ready to go, I've already traced on the fusible web like I did before. And then when I cut it out right on the line and I took off the paper on the back. And the easiest way to do that, you're going to have the shape with the freezer paper on the back. All you do, the fusible web paper, you just scratch it with a pin and that will just lift right off. Okay, so this one's all ready to go. And I'm going to cover that stem end with the petals, get them right there, and get everything sort of the way I want it to be, making sure I like that placement. Maybe a little more this way. Remember, you only have to make yourself happy. You don't have to do it there, I like that one. Okay, so I'm gonna fuse it in place now, like that. It doesn't take a long time, but you want it to be in place like that. This one is one that I prepared with a template plastic. I just put a little dab of glue stick, plain old Elmer's glue stick there, and just kind of press that in place. This is my freezer paper one, and it's been just pushed in place. The freezer paper, I put an iron on it, so it's just kind of, see, that's just the freezer paper holding it down. Okay, and I have my vine, I've both pinned and glued just to keep everybody in place. All right, so the next step is showing you how to actually stitch that down on the machine. And the ones I'm going to show you on the machine, I'm going to show you how to do it with fusible web, because the fusible web one has a raw edge. It's the one that isn't turned under. You want to make sure you do some sort of stitching over that edge or just inside that edge. Okay, so we're going to go over to the machine. Excuse me, I'm just going to move these guys out of the way. My lovely messes. Okay. On the machine, I have changed the foot, and now I have an open-toed foot. And the reason I have an open-toed foot is because I need to be able to really see what I'm doing. I need to see what the machine is doing. And so I have that all set and ready to go. And this is going to be, I'm going to be showing you a blanket stitch. So I'm going to look in the FOF here, and there's going to be a list of stitches up here. And I happen to know, because I looked earlier, that I want stitch number 60. No, there it is. That's the blanket stitch. Okay, to do a blanket stitch on the machine, there are a couple of things that you're going to want to know about. Okay, so what I'm going to do, instead of doing what you would normally do in stitching, I'm going to drop that down, and I'm just going to bring that foot down into the fabric here. You see that? And I'm going to bring it back up, drawing up the thread. I'm just going to lift that presser foot and pull on this thread, that top thread, until you see how the bobbin thread just came up? Right there, we have a loop right there, and I'm going to pull that through because I want to make darn sure that that's not in the way when we're sewing. And then I'm going to go ahead, put the presser foot down, and what's going to happen, the needle is going to run along the outer edge and then swing over for the stitch. And then a little further and swing over for the stitch. And what that does, it adheres, it secures that outer edge, and it's also very pretty. I've got a matching thread here, and you'll see that it's very subtle, which is really, for this quilt, it's in keeping with this quilt because a lot of the applique is subtle. So I'm going to show you how that works now. Okay, we'll put the glasses back on now that I'm getting close. All right, so I'm going to put the down like that, and I'm going to pivot the fabric so that the applique, when it swings over, when that needle swings over, it's going to be perpendicular to the outer edge of the applique piece. All right, so I'm just going to go like that. You see how that's going across and perpendicular? Okay, so it's kind of harder to see, but you'll see it. And then the next stitch, I'm coming forward again. It's going to be about here. So I'm just going to do my needle down function. There we go, because now I can pivot and not worry about skewing things. So I pivoted, and then it's going to swing over again. and do my stitch like that. And then it's coming forward to the next one. Okay, like this, and then it goes over like that. If you want to pivot, you need to pivot when the needle is down and outside. You don't want to do any pivoting when it's in here, because if you do, of course, you're not going to have this nice, neat over and back. It'll make more of a V shape because it won't be coming back on itself. So that's all there is to it. Stitch forward, I can pivot now. There we go. And then I'm going to let that needle go down, pivot. This is one thing I love about this machine. Do you see that every time I stop to pivot, that picks up? The presser foot just comes right up. It's gorgeous. Okay. Don't pivot when it's doing that swing stitch. Just kind of keep that in the back of your head. If you want to show off your blanket stitch, you can use a contrasting thread. Okay, now how do you handle a point like this? I'm coming to the point of the leaf, and I'm going to let it swing over like that, and then come down and take the next stitch forward, and I'm going to leave the needle down and pivot so the needle's going to come more into the center like that. And then it's going to come across the top of the leaf and down. And when I'm pivoting, I'm making sure that it's going to land in the petal rather than outside of the petal in the background fabric. Okay. There you go. And when I'm done with an area, like if I were completely finished, and I am finished with this piece because this goes under that big one, I'm going to just bring the needle back up and take it out of the machine. And I'm going to cut a pretty decent thread tail like that. And what I can do now on the back, let me show you. I can pull up on the thread like that, oops, and bring the thread to the back from the front. It's similar to how we did it at the beginning. There, I pull it to the back like that, and I would just knot it off and just really truly tie a knot. And back in the beginning, remember I pulled these guys to the front so I wouldn't have a knot? Oops, I wouldn't have a knot. Okay, well now I'm going to pull them to the back. And it's so easy because all you're doing is pulling up on that first stitch like that, and it brings the loop with it. There you go. So now they're both on the back, and I would tie that off. All right, and that's your blanket stitch. And you can see it's actually really charming. I used a variegated red on this one. I just thought it added some, really sweet kind of just that extra color change. And it's quick and easy, as you can see. You can also see, given how much I had to turn it, why you wouldn't want that attached, why you don't want that border attached for all that applique, because it'd make it really hard to do. Okay, so the next way I'm going to show you involves monofilament or invisible thread. So I'm just going to change the thread on the machine. I'll be right back. Alrighty, I have changed the thread in the machine. I'm putting in a monofilament, and what I'm going to do next is change the stitch number because I'm not going to keep doing the blanket stitch. I'm going to go to just a regular old normal straight stitch. So I'm just going to put in stitch number 1. Alrighty, and there it goes. It's all set, ready to go. And when you're using monofilament, you are going to want to try, just take some scraps of fabric and play a little bit and see if you have to adjust the tension on your machine. You may have to because it's very different from other threads. But if you've ever heard someone tell you that to change the bobbin tension, you just move that little screw on the bobbin case, don't do it. Yes, that would change the tension, but it's very, very difficult to get the screw in the right place on a bobbin case. You're and it's really hard to get back where it belongs. So you're much better off to just balance the top and bottom tension by changing the top tension, all right? So I'm going to show you now how to do this one. And I'm continuing with my little tulip, only this time I'm going to do that center part of the tulip. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put that feed dog down, the presser foot, and I'm going to do that same needle down function. And what I'm doing is just a straight stitch. And I'm doing it just inside, do you see I'm just inside the edge of that applique piece, like that. If you want to, you could make it a smaller stitch. And I'm just inside that little piece. And when I come to the point, I'm going to leave that needle down and pivot like this. And then I'm just going to sew up the other side like that. And it's something that's pretty hard to see on your machine. And see, I put it down and pivot like that. And I'm going to go right through there. And just pivot. And I'll come all the way back to the beginning. All right, that's all there is to it. Get that needle up and get the pressure foot up. And I'll bring it out. And I will do the same thing. I would, in the same manner, go ahead and pull those threads to the back and then knot them off. I'll just get rid of those red ones. And you can't see them. So it's going to be darn hard for me to show you pulling them through. But just so you can see what it's done here. Isn't that, see, it's nice and neat. It's going right along the edge. And most importantly, it'll keep that edge secure so it won't ravel. You know, you've got fusible web and that'll hold it, but just for time, you know, going forward so you don't have to worry about it ever lifting off. And that's all there is to it. And so you can machine applique on fusible web, prepared applique, with either the blanket stitch or the straight stitch. You can also use the blanket stitch or the straight stitch on applique that has been prepared with the plastic template, anything with a little turn under. So you actually can have that turn under in place. It doesn't mean you can't edge stitch something if the edge is turned under. It just is another way to make it secure, but you must edge stitch if you're using fusible web. Fusible web is not enough. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you how to hand applique. I'm just going to take this over here, in my little spot. Okay, I'm going to bring my little stool with me. Okay, there we go. Alrighty, so I've got my trusty glasses, and I have a few other things as well. I have needles, I have my thimble, and I have some thread. I'm using white thread because you'll be able to see it. It is not what you want to use when you're actually doing your hand applique because it's going to show, and hand applique really shouldn't show. And so the needles that I use, you can either use a straw needle, which is what these are, or a milliner's needle. They're a little bit longer and they are easy to handle. If it's too small, I can't really get what I want with it. So I use either a straw needle or a milliner's needle. And I have a milliner's needle already threaded. And I've knotted the thread back there. Kind of hard to see. Okay, now I'm going to put my glasses on. And I'm going to turn this around. I'm right-handed. So being right-handed, I want it to be where I'm stitching from my right to my left. So if I'm going to go ahead and stitch on the stem, for instance, what I want to do is hide that knot. All right, I'm going to take a stitch like this. I'm going inside here and grabbing some of that top fabric right there. Do you see that? And when I come along that edge, and I pull that through, that knot is going to hide underneath there. You see how the knot's gone? Okay, and what I do, you're going to want to take the tiniest little stitch you can. I brought the needle off at the very edge. Do you see? It's right at the very edge. And you put that needle straight down through your background fabric. So you have the tiniest stitch imaginable on top. And then underneath, my needle is going to go down, an eighth of an inch or so, and it's going to come out in that edge again. You see that very, very edge. You see that? Okay. And I'm just going to pull that through like that and snug it in, and I'll do the same thing again. I'm putting the needle down right off the curb from where it came up and bringing it again up in the very edge of that fabric, like that. Okay? And I'm going to do a few stitches here so you can kind of see what it looks like when I'm doing them. You may wish to work in a hoop, and there's nothing really wrong with that, except when you work in a hoop, it can really skew things, especially applique you've already finished. So if you have something sewn down. So I really don't recommend working in a hoop, but if you need to, of course you can, and you'll just have to do some pressing later. Okay, so I'm just going to snug that up. There we go. And if you look there, even with white thread, you can hardly see those stitches. See that? Hardly see that at all. And that's all there is to it. For hand applique, that's all you have to do. Now the only other time it's different, and I'm just going to travel this thread over here rather than, you know, knotting it off and all that. Travel it over here by my little freezer paper leaf. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing. Instead of, in terms of, I'm coming up here at the very edge. Now this still has freezer paper in it. Not a problem, because I'm stitching at the very edge of it. And I'm going down, taking another little bitty stitch, like that. There we go. Now if I'd been seeing, just go down here, take a little bitty stitch, and I'm not catching the freezer paper. I can tell when the needle goes through if it's going into paper or if it's just going into fabric. If it's going into paper, it's going to feel different. It won't feel smooth, it'll feel kind of Well, even if you catch a tiny bit of paper, it doesn't really matter. But what I'm going to show you is, when you get up here, now this is on top of the stem. Oops, like that. You say that's on top of the stem there. I am going to stitch this guy. If I had already stitched the stem in place, or the vine, I would just be happy with leaving it there, and I would stitch only through the vine. So because the vine is what you're going to do first, when you're appliquing, you always start from the bottom. So the bottommost part of whatever motif you're doing is the one you applique first. So we're going to pretend that my vine was already completely appliqued. And so when I'm doing that, I don't have to go all the way through to the background fabric. I can just stitch into the vine itself. Okay, like, of course, the needle came over right there. There we go. I can just stitch into the vine, and that's fine. Now, usually when I'm appliquing and I'm pushing on the end of the needle, I wear a thimble. People wonder, a lot of people wonder what a thimble is for. They think it's to protect the finger over here. It's not, although some people do it. It's really for pushing the needle so you don't hurt yourself when you do it over and over and over again. Okay, so if I had that completely stitched around, when I got to, you know, somewhere where it was just about done, and we'll pretend I did that, you're going to pull back on that freezer paper, and you're just going to take your thimble off. You're just going to peel back that edge from one side and get a hold of the freezer paper, and you'll be tugging it free. And if I had that all sewn down, it would just pop right out. Okay, like that. There we go. Okay, all done. Let go. All right. There. And of course, this would have been stitched down, it would stay there. The alternative you have, if you're doing something with freezer paper, you can stitch all the way around, like that, have that all stitched, and you can come to the back of your fabric. We're pretending that's stitched down. You see my little stitches there? See those guys? And what you can do is you cut through the background fabric right underneath that applique, like that. And then you can go in with a pair of scissors, excuse me, if you're a pair of tweezers, and grab that freezer paper and pull it out. Okay? So that's really all there is to it. It's super easy to hand applique. The things to think about are when you start, you're going to be starting and you're going to be hiding that knot underneath right where you begin. When you finish a length of thread, when you're appliquing, you take the thread to the back and you just tie a knot off, same as you always do. And that's about it. Just remember, like for instance, this stem, I need to make sure it's under the vine. I would applique the stem first, and then the vine, or the flower, and then the vine. The same thing, because the leaves are on top of the stem, excuse me, the vine, you're going to want to applique the vine first, and then applique the leaves, all right? It's pretty simple, and don't forget these little guys here. Again, I've got this one with just the regular turned under edge that I did with the template plastic, and I put a dab of glue stick and it'll just stay there in place. And of course you can use the glue stick if you wanted to put these guys down as well. Just a little dab and you put it in place. And that's it. So you can machine applique, you can hand applique, and if I'd stitched that all the way around, it'd be really pretty. But it's super easy and it's really fun, and I hope you enjoy it. The only other thing I'll just tell you real quick, remember this is bias, so it looks roughly now, but when you stitch that down, it'll be nice and smooth and it'll cooperate with you. So that's about it on the applique. Your homework is going to be very busy, is to get those the appliques on and get them stitched down. And remember, when you come to that corner, like I have right here, if this is the one that's going up the side, what I did was I left that great big tail because I'm going to stitch this side to the quilt, and then I'll have that top border strip come in up here, which will also be partially appliqued, and then I'm going to lay that over, applique that in place, and there's a little curlicue that goes like that that covers the end. Okay, and I'll trim that to the exact right length once I have it in place. And so the only thing you're going to have to applique when it's attached to the full machine is this corner. All right, I think that covers it. And so go ahead, have fun appliquing. Remember, if you don't have a favorite way yet, try all 3 ways and see which one you like best, including 3 ways to prepare your templates, and machining 2 ways, hand appliquing, and that's it. So I'll see you back here next time when we talk about quilting and finishing the quilt. I hope you have a wonderful time appliquing.